We are in the book of Revelation, continuing our study just verse by verse through this book and hoping that in the midst of it, God is making his word plain or at least clearer, trying to just speak into our lives the thing he has. And so hopefully you have a Bible. If you don't, there are Bibles around you, chairs nearby. Grab one of those, hoping that in this time that God would take his word and just speak to you again in a fresh way. Making our way through the entire book of Revelation, but in this section, it is what we call, in one sense, the letters to the seven churches. Revelation 2 and 3 are 7 letters that Jesus dictates to 7 churches, and in the midst of it speaks to us. We think about how profound that is and hoping that you would get it. So with that aim, you guys are hopefully familiar, we have provided for you a note sheet that is there in your bulletin if you want to use this to follow along. Now, if you did not get one of those when you came in the door this morning, if you will raise your hands, our ushers and greeters will bring you one. If you need a pen, also, you can hold your hand up and they will make sure you have one. If this is something that's good for you, works for you to work through. No need that you have to do it, but definitely encouraging if you're wanting to, that this would be there. Hey, those online, it is also available as a PDF on our website, so you can go there and get that, and we would love for you to be able to use that to follow along with us. Well, let's take a moment there with what we're positioning there to hear from him. Let's position our hearts in a fresh way that that's exactly what we would do. Would you join me? Lord, would you just help us right now that we indeed would be in a receptive place, a place where we're listening, where we're open, where you would speak, where your truth would just make the impact that you've intended for it to make into our lives together and individually. Open our hearts, open our minds. Give us the ability to hear your voice right now. I'm asking for that. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. There are letters that everybody wants to receive, right? I mean, maybe it's the income tax letter that comes in, or maybe it's, if it's a refund, that is. Or if it's, if you'd ever get like the Publishers Clearinghouse, you'd be like, I'd be all in for that. Or maybe there would be personal letters. There's like somebody that you're like, when you see that letter, you are so excited to see it in the mailbox. Well, I want you to know this letter is that letter. We find ourselves here in Revelation just making our way through, and Jesus dictates 7 letters, but this is the best one. This is the letter that if you could choose which letter would be for you, if you were like, okay, if there's one of these that I wanted to be my letter, this would be the letter you would want Jesus to write to you and to write to us as a church. And it's definitely something we need to see because it stands in such a beautiful place in the midst of everything that's there. In fact, if you'll notice with me as we begin this letter, it begins, as every one of the 7 letters do, where Jesus begins by drawing attention to himself, helping us understand that what we need is him. He begins every letter by revealing parts of his character that is true for all of us, but applies specifically to this church. And would you notice with me what he says to this one? Revelation chapter 3, verse 7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write these things. Says he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key of David, he who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens. This letter does stand, again, unique in these 7 letters, and it does so in a number of ways, not only because it's the best letter, but there are some very interesting differences that if you're not paying attention, you might miss. And right here is actually one of the first ones. See, when Jesus begins, he began in Revelation chapter 1, and he gives John, who is the author of this book, this incredible revelation of who he is. If you were with us in Revelation 1, you might remember that John turns and he sees Jesus in this glorified state, and it makes these incredible statements that are true of Jesus. Well, for the 7 churches so far, each of the introductions of the letters is drawn from chapter 1. That's something that he said in chapter 1, whether that he's the one that's walking in the middle of the lampstands or upholding the stars or whatever that is, it was pictures that were given to us in chapter 1. That's true of all the letters so far, but this is the only one that that's not true of. Everything that's given here at the beginning of this letter is not found in chapter 1. It's not in that revelation. Oh, it's biblical. It's deeper than that. And all by itself, there is something that just invites us into something that is unique in this letter that's different than the others. It is a picture of seeing Jesus in a way that is deeper and, in one sense, more profound. So what did he tell us? I mean, he told us 3 things, right? You probably already saw them, but we see him there in verse 7. It says that, the one who's writing these things says, he who is holy, he who is true, and then thirdly, he who has the key of David. 3 things he tells us about himself that, again, become the main thing, that become the thing that if you take one thing out of this message and nothing else, take these things, that you would see Jesus a little bit better than you've seen him before. So what did Jesus just tell us about himself? First of all, he says he is holy. The one who's writing is the one who's holy, and holy has the idea of altogether pure, altogether perfect, altogether sacred. When you hear the word holy, it is all of that. But maybe one of the most important things for you to understand, it is God's primary attribute. When you think about God and who he is and his character, holiness is the most essential part. Now, that's just not the way everybody takes it today. If you asked the average person on the street what is God's main characteristic, they would probably say, God is love. God is a loving God. That's who he is. And indeed, that's true. God is love. God, he is the one that just really does that. 1 John tells us that, but that's not the core issue. When the angels are in God's presence in Isaiah 6, and we're going to see it soon in a couple chapters here in Revelation, when the angels are in God's presence, they are around the throne crying, holy, holy, holy. This is the Lord God Almighty. It is this sense of saying, God, this is who you are. That one of God's primary attributes is he is holy. Beautifully, gloriously, perfect, no shadow, no changing, no errors, no ugliness, no sin. I mean, there is this in him that is the greatest thing about who he is. And the thing that is the most delightful things about who God is. And terrifying things. But he's holy. It's incredibly good. And Jesus says, that's who I am. I'm the one who is holy. But not only holy, but he tells us he who is true. And the word true, the specific word that's used here in the Greek language, has the idea of that which is real or that which is genuine as opposed to that which is not. That which is real compared to that which is fake or phony or just a copy. That which is the genuine thing against that which is not. That is altogether just plastic and phony and not that. He's the real. Jesus would say it this way when he told us, you guys might recognize it, John 14. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He says, I'm it. I am the truth. Not a truth. I'm the truth. I mean, you want to know what truth is? It's encapsulated in me, Jesus says. In fact, he would tell his disciples in John 10, he said to them, most assuredly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers. And the idea of before may even be all those who came any other way. It's a lie. They're thieves, they're robbers. If anybody's given mankind hope and it's not me, it's a lie. Because I'm the only hope. I'm the door. I'm the truth. And that's an incredible thing to look on Jesus and say, okay, this is who he is. He is holy and he is true. Now, those are powerful. We could spend a long time on them. But we add this third, and it is the one that is maybe the most obscure to us. It says, well, I'm the one that has the key of David. So what does that mean to have the key of David? Well, like all of Revelation, it's drawing off themes elsewhere in the Bible. The way you understand the book of Revelation is by knowing the rest of the Bible. And there's only one place in Scripture where that specific phrase is used. It's used in Isaiah chapter 22. Can I quickly tell you the story? In Isaiah 22, it begins by letting us know there. It says, thus says the Lord, God of hosts, come to the steward, to Shebna, who is over the household, and say to him. So quick pause. I'm going to use the ESV in these little verses on the screen. I think it does a better job in this section rendering it. So I'm going to use that translation on the screen in a moment. But it's an incredible time in Israel's history. Isaiah is there, and Israel's on this decline. They are heading towards judgment. And in the midst of that, lots of things are happening. But this gives us this very specific window. He says, Isaiah, I want you to go. I'm the Lord. I'm the God of hosts. I'm the one who's in charge of everything. I want you to go to the steward. I want you to go to the one who is over the entire household. That is of the king, of the nation. This is the man who is kind of at the right hand, in charge of, the finances, in charge of the money, in charge of, kind of administrating the king's household. That's who he is. He says, I want you to go to him. He's the steward in the house of the king. And I want you to tell him this. I want you to tell him, what have you to do here? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing in this moment? And whom have you here that you have cut out here a tomb for yourself? You have cut out a tomb on the height, and you carve a dwelling for yourself in the rock. And it begins to draw us to this picture that has been repeated so many times in history that many of you are just familiar with it. We begin to see that this man who had the power under the king, he misuses his power. He misuses it for his own glory. He begins to build his own house. He begins to misuse it, carving out his own life and misusing the king's power and authority. And to this, God just tells him, he says, behold, the Lord will hurl you away violently, O you strong man. He will seize firm hold on you and whirl you around and throw you like a ball into a wide land. Isn't that a fun description? I mean, can you just picture it? It's like God says, just go grab hold of him and we're going to whirl him around and around. Just we're going to toss him out of here. We're just going to remove him from his place. Well, why? I mean, what's again happening? He says, there's where you're going to go. You're going to die. There shall be your glorious chariots. Obviously, he had misused and kind of siphoned off the funds of the land and had his own, amazing vehicles in the day. I mean, he'd had just misusing, had these beautiful chariots that were his. It says, there you shall die, there you shall be your glorious chariots. You shame of your master's house. I will thrust you from your office, and you will be pulled down from your station. Again, I think you see it. I mean, I wish there was wow, Jim, I'd never even heard of anybody doing that. And it's like, no, that's just not true. It's been repeated so many times where somebody who gets power, who gets authority, begins to use it wrongly. And he just says, you know what, Shebna, you're a shame. You're an embarrassment to your master's house. What you have done, you mock him, you misrepresent the king, you're misrepresenting the nation, you're using it for your own selfish ends, you're using it for your own selfish gain. And he says, I'm going to take you out of your office. I'm going to remove you from your station. And then God says this, in that day, I will call my servant Eliakim of the son of Hilkiah, and I will clothe him with your robe and bind your sash on him, and will commit your authority into his hand. I'm going to put somebody else in your position. I'm going to give him your authority. Again, just kind of need to hear that. And then he tells him, and I will place on his shoulder the key of the house of David. He shall open, and none shall shut, and he shall shut, and none shall open. Now, that's exactly what we just read in our text in Revelation, right? I mean, so without any doubt, what God is referring to here about Jesus, that this was true of a specific man named Eliakim in the Old Testament, but its shadow beyond it was so much better, because in it we see Jesus. And here's this picture. He says, here's going to be this one who is going to step in, and I'm going to put the authority on him. And when he has authority, it's going to be a powerful authority, or it's going to be a good authority. So we could say it this way, okay, what is this about Jesus? What are we learning about Jesus? What is it we're supposed to see? Well, this key of David is authority. It is that, because he told him, hey, that's going to be that. That's going to be, I'm going to put your authority on this one. It is power. It is authority. But this authority in this sense is an unstoppable. It's an irresistible authority. I mean, you guys got it, right? He says when he opens the door, nobody can shut it. And when he shuts it, nobody can open it. What he has is an authority that cannot be resisted, that cannot be overcome. It's a powerful authority, but it's a good authority. I mean, that's kind of the picture, right? And it kind of ties into what we've just seen, that he's holy and he's true. That when we think about what God was telling Shebna is, you've misused the authority. You've used it for your glory. You've built your own kingdom. You're a shame to your master's house, he told Shebna. But Jesus is one that is altogether perfect. That he's holy and he's true, and his authority is a pure authority. There's no misuse. There's no impropriety. There's nothing in him. And his authority is a solid, wonderful, good authority. And sometimes to see that, you almost need to see it through the lens of a Shebna. Again, maybe for some of you, you're like, oh, I could add to that. I know of a dozen people like Shebna, people who have, misused their office, misused their authority. Good. Look through that to see the wonder of a Christ who is nothing like that, who is absolutely good, who's absolutely pure, who's wonderfully trustworthy. So that's what Jesus wants us to see. So we'll just kind of sum it up. We'll use a summary statement here, that he's holy, that he's true, and all authority is his. That this is what you need to understand, and this is absolutely, wonderfully, gloriously true of our Savior. And I hope you know it. I hope you see this. I hope in one sense you're like, yeah, that's my Savior. That's the God I love. That's the one I'm pursuing, because this is who he's laying out to us this morning. So we get this amazing letter. Jesus begins this place of showing us who he is. And then he continues in the letter, and he comes to the place of commendation. That after he introduces it and shows who he is in every letter, he moves into a place where he gives commendation to that church specifically. Now, before we read it, you might just notice, even as I put it up on the screen or it's there on your note sheets, this one's different. It's a very different letter. If you've been with us in Revelation so far, this is unique. It hasn't happened this way before. We've definitely found things that he commends. But in the midst of his commendation, he's going to give three promises. He's going to have three commendations. And at the same moment, three promises that he's not done in any other letter except this one, which makes it, again, just singularly a unique letter. So what does he say? Well, let's read it. Look there in verse 8 with me. He tells it to us this way. I know your works. See, I have set before you an open door, and no one can shut it. For you have a little strength, have kept my word, and have not denied my name. Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Indeed, I will make them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. Because you have kept my command to persevere, I will also keep you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon the whole world, to test those who dwell on the earth. Behold, at the beginning of verse 11, I am coming quickly. Okay, so he begins this commendation, and he does so with a place of giving him a promise. And he says, I have set before you an open door. Now, this rolls right off of Jesus' revelation of himself, right? He just told us, I have the key of David. When I open, no one can shut it. And when I shut it, no one can open it. And I am taking that authority, and to you, he tells this church, I'm giving you an open door, and nobody can shut it. An open door becomes a picture biblically of God-given opportunities, of God giving us that. Paul would say it this way. 1 Corinthians, he says, for a great and effective door has been opened to me, and there are many adversaries. He would say it in 2 Corinthians this way. Furthermore, when I came to Troas to preach Christ's gospel, and a door was opened to me by the Lord. The Lord opened a door. In fact, he tells us to be praying for that, and we ought to be. As we think about what that looks like and how that works, he says, meanwhile, praying also for us that God would open to us a door for the word to speak the mystery of Christ, which I am also in chains. So an open door is a God-given opportunity, which is connected again, by the way, to the authority that is Christ. And this should be so like, oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's the very nature of our commission. This is the Great Commission, right? There's, you get to the end of the book of Matthew, when Jesus came and he spoke to them, he says, all authority has been given to me. I have the key of David. I open doors and nobody can shut them. I shut them, nobody can open them. I have authority, Jesus says. He says, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. You go out and represent me. You go out and do this. So Jesus' authority and our opportunity, wonderfully connected. And so that's what he's telling this church. He begins by just telling them, I'm giving you an open door. You have some God-given opportunities. Because why? Well, then he gives us the commendations. As he tells us again in verse 8, I know your works. See, I have set before you an open door, and no one can shut it for. Now, that word of for, again, is worth noticing. This is the reason. This is the reason you have an open door. It's because of the good things that you're doing. It's because of the good things that are there. For you have a little strength. You have kept my word, and you have not denied my name. It's three things. It says, here's the thing. You have a little strength. You have kept my word, and you have not denied my name. Yeah, you've done that. That's what Jesus tells them. These are the good things that Jesus finds in this church. So he tells them you have a little strength. Understand this. This is not a backhanded compliment. This is not one of those things that's like, well, you have strength. It's just actually really small, where it actually becomes an insult. No, it's not that. It's actually a great compliment. Because one of the greatest lessons that you need in life is to know that you have a little strength. Paul would learn it in his own life when he think about it, just a place of knowing weakness, that we would understand and know we're weak. And he would say it this way in 2 Corinthians. He said, for when I am weak, then I am strong. That my strength, the place where life becomes strong, is when I know I'm weak. That's how it works. And he had to learn this. He learned this through his own struggles, was he asked God to remove what he called his thorn in the flesh. And God responded and told him, my grace is sufficient for you. For my strength is made perfect in weakness. No, Paul, you want to be weak because when you're weak, I'm strong. You want weakness. You are weak. And Paul's like, okay, I get it. I need that. Jesus would give it to us in the Beatitudes. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's really good when you know how poor you are. It is really good when you know how incredibly spiritually weak you are, because that's where it draws you to your need for Christ. Paul would again say it in Philippians this way. He says, for we are those who rejoice in Christ Jesus and have no confidence in the flesh. He says what God would have for us is a place that we find Jesus to be everything, and we think, I don't have any confidence in me. I don't have any confidence. I mean, I know I'm weak. I know that's who I am. I know I'm weak. I know I'm unworthy. I get that. I know that. I celebrate that. That's a good thing. And it's a compliment. It says, you guys know that. You know you're weak, and that's a good place. Hey, when we get to it next week and we consider the church of Laodicea, just think about this for a moment, that they don't really understand how weak they are. Well, that's a preview. Not only do they know they're weak, but they're holding fast to the word. He says, you have kept my word. You're a Bible people. You're a people that hold on to the word of God. Job would say it this way. He says, I have not departed from the commandment of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my necessary food. When Job thought about where he was in life, he says, here's where I am. I treasure God's truth. It is more important to me than eating. God's word is more important to me than daily food. And I want to tell you, it's such a powerful reality. And right here, I am just vexed because I could literally spend an hour on this one thought. Because we find hundreds of scriptures that tell us this, that the Bible is our source of life, that everything necessary for life and godliness is found right here, that this book is our life, that this book is our hope, that this is how God works into our lives. But I just want to say, Jesus just tells this church, you guys kept that. You have held on to my word. You've held my word, and you've valued my word, and because you've valued my word, he finds in them good things. But it wasn't just his word, it was also holding on to his name. That is honoring Jesus and being dependent upon him. Just this centrality of Christ in their lives, that they would find that that's really where we are. Jesus told us, John 15, familiar section where he told us without him we can do nothing. We need to abide in Christ, that our life is fixed in clinging to and drawing our source and Jesus being our everything. Again, it's fundamental to everything we are. And this church knew it. This church was doing it. This church knows they're weak, and they're holding on to his word, and they're not denying Jesus. And this is what makes this church so amazing. This is what makes this church so beautiful. This is what makes it a church that we think, hey, that is what I want. And to that end, he gives them two more promises. Tells us there in verse 9, it says, "Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Indeed, I will make them come and worship before your feet and to know that I have loved you." This promise, this place where he says, I'm going to make them, this people that he's talking about here, come and recognize and declare that I have loved you. I've loved you. Let's just kind of quickly take this apart. We won't spend a long time on it, but it's a good promise. He says, here's this. I'm going to make those of the synagogue of Satan. This is the second time we found this. If you've been with us in the letters to the churches, this was in the second letter as well to the church of Smyrna, which is interesting because there are some interesting connections. He says, I'm going to make those who are of the synagogue of Satan. What is that? Well, synagogue literally means to be congregation. But he's basically saying, hey, they're Satan's congregation, not God's congregation. They're Satan's church, not God's church. They say they are God's people, but they're not. He says they say they're Jews. He says, but they're not. They're lying when they say that. The idea is that they are saying, hey, we're God's people. We're the people that God loves. We're the people that are right with God. And he says they're not. They say that, but they're not. They're lying when they say that. And it lets us know that this church was facing just religious persecution, opposition, which similarly, by the way, was that case for church in Smyrna. That there was an opposition, and one of the scary things is the opposition so often comes from a religious angle. But he looks on these and he says, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make these who act like they're God's people and they're not. There's a day that they're going to come and they're going to worship at your feet. It's not the idea that they're going to worship them, nor is it a statement that they're going to be saved. It is a statement that they're going to acknowledge that these are saved. See, there's a day coming, the Bible tells us, when every knee is going to bow, every tongue is going to confess that Jesus is Lord. Doesn't mean the whole world's going to be saved, but there is a day where they're going to come and go, you are the answer. And at the same moment when they acknowledge that Jesus was the answer, they'll see us there. And they're going to just before us go, you guys go, you figured it out. I mean, people who are believers, you got it. I mean, here's this incredible, wonderful place. He says at that moment, they're going to know. They're going to know that I have loved you. And it's an amazing statement. He says on that day, the world is going to recognize that God has loved these. That he's loved this church. He's loved this people. That they're going to go, you're the ones that God, his love is shed upon. You're the ones that know that. That's a pretty incredible statement. And it surely was so significant into their lives, but maybe it's significant into yours. Maybe in a place that God would just be speaking it to somebody in a very special way this morning, that there's opposition and places where people mock and make fun, and even sometimes from a religious place, but there's a day coming. There's a day coming, if you're really his, that they're going to get it, and they're going to see it, and they'll know, hey, you really are his. It's an amazing promise with incredible wonder that just locks into who they really are. But then he adds one more promise. He gives it to us there in verse 10. Because you have kept my command to persevere, I will also keep you from the hour of trial which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Is this sense that he's letting us know that he's going to keep them from the hour of trial. Again, we'll just do the same thing. Let's just take the words. Just focus on them. You don't need to write all this down. I didn't give you place in your book to do that, so you can just pay attention to the words. They're just there. He says, I'm going to keep you from the hour of trial, not trials. We are not exempt from trials. I mean, Jesus actually promised us, like, in this world you will have trouble. I mean, there is no place that a Christian could ever think, hey, we're exempt from trials. Not so. But this one, yes. He says, I'm going to keep you from a very specific hour of trial. Not all trials, but again, a specific one. He says, which is going to come upon the entire world. It's going to be something that is global, that is affecting everybody, that's going to change the whole world. But he tells them it's something that's coming. He says, which shall come upon the whole world. And I believe we're waiting for it to come. It's never happened. I mean, there is no place that you can look back into this specific church in history and say, okay, following something happened on a global scale. No, it hasn't happened. And I want to tell you, I still think it hasn't happened. Most Bible students look on this and understand this could only be really referring to something that we sometimes call the Great Tribulation, but it is the most difficult moment and period in history that's going to come. Jesus would say it this way. He says, "For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor shall ever be again." That's just a sobering statement. If you're unfamiliar with what that is, we're going to get to this further in the book of Revelation because it's definitely going to talk about it. But he lets us know there's a moment in time, there's a period in time coming that is the worst period in history that has ever happened. Everything that has ever happened in the world pales in light of this. Every difficulty, every trial, every plague, every earthquake, every volcano, every whatever that is, it has not come close to what this is. It's going to be the hardest thing ever. And he's telling them, he says, that's coming. But he lets us know that's going to come to test all those who dwell on the earth. And the idea of testing, the word literally means to prove, to kind of make solid, to bring fully to light, either good or bad. But he says it's going to test those who dwell on the earth. And this is actually a phrase that's used in the book of Revelation almost 10, 11 times. We'll see it a bunch of times. And when it's used to refer to the unbelieving world. Those whose home is on earth. Where if you're a Christian, your home is in heaven. Our citizenship is in heaven. This is not our home. But he says those who dwell on the earth, it's going to test them. It's going to be a time of trial for all of those, but he's just telling us, hey, you're going to be kept out of that. You're not going to be in the midst of that. You're going to be kept from that. You're going to be kept out of the Great Tribulation. Most believing, I believe, that this is a reference to the rapture. He's saying, you're not going to go through that. That's not going to be for you. That's for the world. It's not for you. But because you've kept this, because you have been persevering in these things, that's not going to be what you go through. It's just an amazing promise. Just an amazing promise. So summing it up, we would say, okay, this is a church that is faithful. This is a true church that's blessed by God. I mean, they're faithful. They are holding fast to Christ, holding fast to his word. I mean, there's just something powerful in that they need to see. So with that, you can just flip your notebook over for a moment if you want to and look there in there. We went through in that first study where we overviewed all of this and we told you there are a number of things that are happening throughout these 7 churches that you can understand. And if you missed that, you might want to get that study. But 2 things I want to just highlight out of that list. First of all, we told you that by referencing 7 churches, Jesus is able to address the entire church. That in any generation, every church is one of these 7 churches. Every church in our world falls into one of these 7 categories. Maybe sometimes it's even a season that church is going through. And as we think about this one, this is the one that everybody should want to be that faithful, true church blessed by God. I mean, this lets us know that there are churches in our world today that God would say this of. And I'm just telling you, I mean, I hope I'm making it to me. We really would love it if Jesus would say this about us. I mean, we really would. There's not a place where I'm asking you to come and tell me, Jim, I think we are, because I'm not positive we are. I do know this is what I want. I do know this that I want, and I'm grateful that there are, but there are churches in our world today that, boy, they're faithful in the midst of all this. They fall into that category, and it's definitely what we want to pursue. But it's also interesting to think about it this way, that these 7 churches might, and again, it's just a question, it's not a solid, might represent church history. The Bible students have noticed for years that, these 7 churches really figure, if you take all of church history, it moves through these 7 churches pretty significantly, so that each church almost becomes a type of an age that the church goes through. If that is true, what church might the Church of Philadelphia represent? Well, it would be the church from about 1500 to 1900. It would be the Reformation. It would be the awakenings that took place. And this is not a study in church history, so I'm not going to be unpacking all of this to you, but I'll just tell you this. If you know anybody in church history and you find them significant, I'll tell you it's probably from that season in time. Whether it be Martin Luther, who started the Protestant Reformation, or John Calvin, or whether it be Charles Spurgeon, or William Carey, or Hudson Taylor, or George Mueller, or it would be the people who really did change. And this is what they did. When the Reformation took place in 1500, they were doing exactly what this church was complimented for. They went back to the Word of God. It's like sola scriptura. It's only going to be what the Bible says. I mean, you show us the Bible, we'll do it, and only Christ. I mean, we're going to cling to Christ. We're going to, it's only about Jesus, and we're going to recognize we're the weak ones. We're the ones who there's no glory for us. There's no significance. It's all by faith. It's all grace. I mean, I should tell you, it's a pretty good representation of what they were. And incredible open doors took place. In that season of time, the church exploded in a way that it had been dormant for thousands of years, for thousand years in the midst of all of that. That the gospel begins to permeate through William Carey into China, into India, and then Hudson Taylor into China. You have the Great Awakenings. You have John Wesley and George Whitefield, and you have the gospel sweeping around the world and incredible revivals and incredible awakenings that all you could simply say is those were open doors. God opened doors that just changed our world. That being said, I just want to tell you right now, we're no longer in that generation. And it's no longer where we are. I really believe that if this is true, we're in the next one, which we'll talk about next week. But significantly, this really did take place. And again, much more we could say, but we'll leave that and just go back to where you are on the other side of your page and just say, okay, here's this church, and it's a good church. They have a little strength. They keep his word. They've not denied his name. And that's what you need to make sure you understand. So Jesus' commendation is followed by his correction. A place where he diagnoses what's wrong. That in every letter he would tell them, hey, I like this about you. And then you'd have this scary word. Nevertheless. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you, he would say. Nevertheless, there are things that are altogether wrong. But if you haven't noticed already, there's none of it here. There is no nevertheless statement. There is no correction. That's why there's no numbers for you to write in here. That when Jesus has this opportunity to bring in, just a rebuke for what's wrong, it's silent. And that silence is louder than amazing statements. A place where he says that he just doesn't bring any further correction. Now, out of these 7 letters, there are 2 churches that this is the case of. The first was the church of Smyrna. There's some interesting tie-ins between this church and that one. Where if you were with us on that second church, we kind of talked through, he didn't make any statement against them. It was a persecuted church, and the persecution was working good in them. But now as he addresses this church, he has nothing bad to say about them. Now, I know that this is probably clear, but I need to make sure I'm making sense. Am I saying that this is a perfect church? I mean, was the church in Philadelphia a perfect church? No. No, there are no perfect churches, right? I mean, you've heard that as a joke, right? Like, if you ever find a perfect church, don't join it because you'll spoil it. You guys are going to think, well, I don't know if I like that. It's really true. I mean, because we are broken people. We mess up everything. There's never been a perfect church. There are no perfect people outside of Jesus right now. So this church that Jesus is talking to, and he brings no correction, it's not because there was nothing that needed correction. It's not because they were doing absolutely everything right. No, that's not the case. So that raises the question, then why is there no correction? And this is really, really big. I mean, this is really, really big. This could change your life for some of you. I mean, just being honest, it could change how you're doing life right now. Because if we are faithfully holding to Jesus, if we are faithfully holding to his word, if we are faithfully recognizing our weakness and dependence upon Christ, you know what happens? We're in this incredible process that the Bible describes as a sanctification process. This is an ongoing place where day by day God is forming us into the image of Christ, that he's using his word and his spirit and people, and he's changing us. And it's as if Jesus says, if you're in that process, he has nothing else to say. He has nothing else to bring at this moment. I just want to tell you, this is absolutely huge. Because here's the deal. For most of you this morning, this is almost impossible to imagine. I wish it applied to everybody in this room. It does not. But if you are faithfully holding on to Jesus, if you are faithfully in his word, if you know you're weak, then God is not saying anything else. And for you who this is true of, I'm just going to say it this way. You are harder on yourself than Jesus is. You are harder on yourself than he is. Because we kind of have the thought that if Jesus had a moment to correct us, he would speak to us about 153,000 things. It's like, tell me what's wrong. I mean, it's like you step into that moment and it's like a judge is there and he's like, okay, so tell me what I'm doing wrong. And you're like, I'm waiting. It's going to come. He's going to be like, because you guys would fill in the blanks. It's like, I'm a bad husband. I'm a bad father. I'm not doing anything well. I don't pray well. I don't witness well. I don't live well. I'm not kind enough. I kicked my dog one time. I mean, whatever it is, you have this list and it's a huge list and you're kind of like, I just know I'm bad. And you feel this disappointment that is disappointment upon yourself, and you feel like, hey, that's what God feels. But God has a plan, and it's different than we want it to be. His plan of changing a Christian's life is not an instantaneous thing. It's a process. Now, salvation is an instantaneous thing. Hebrews would give it to us this way. For by one offering, he has perfected forever those who are being sanctified. By one offering, Jesus died on the cross. He paid for our sins so that if you're a Christian, you're perfect. You've been made perfect. You are justified. You could never be more perfect than you are that moment you believe in Jesus, because he has just taken the blood of Christ and made it just on your account. You are justified and you are made perfect. You are counted perfect. Though right now you're in this process of sanctification, where he's doing this day by day, changing us in light of who he is, where he would give it to us this way in Isaiah. Precept must be upon precept, precept must be on precept, line upon line upon line, here a little, there a little. He says the idea is, okay, so how do we learn? How do we grow? You go a little bit at a time. It's a little bit at a time. You get a little bit, and there's a little bit of growth, and there's a little bit of growth, and there's a little bit of growth, because that's how it happens. It would give it to us this way in Ephesians, talking about Jesus, and it's using the picture of marriage, which is powerful, but telling us that Jesus is dealing with us this way. It says that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of the water by the word. That Jesus is in a process where he is sanctifying us. And he's cleansing us. And he does that by his word. That he does that by his word. So again, let me just see if I can speak plainly. This isn't true of everybody. I wish it was. If you're in the Bible consistently, maybe even daily, if you're a person that believes it and knows I need the Bible, I need it in my life, and you hold on to Jesus because you just know you can't do life with any other way, and you know you're weak, then this might be applying to you. Now, if you don't do that, if you're kind of the person that isn't reading the Bible consistently, or even if reading your Bible is like a check mark, or it's like I did that, I did my, whatever I'm supposed to do, if you're not in the Word of God where you're like daily finding yourself convicted, where it's like, oh, I'm not doing that. God, you touch my heart. You're showing me something in the Bible that I just want to change. And so there's this constant process where the Word of God is identifying things in your life that's changing you. If that's where you are, that's a really good place. And that's how God wants this to happen. And I know maybe I'm making this plain, but I hope so, because I'm just telling you it's not what we want. We want instant righteousness. It's not a perfect illustration, but you can take this across into the areas of health and fitness and see the same thing. We live in a generation of people that want to be instantly healthy. It's like everybody's like, if I could have those instant abs, like, can I have abs in like 3 days? How do I get those guns? How do I get really, can we do that like in one workout? It's like, no, you want that? It's going to take some time. It's going to take daily, consistent, pressing. That's how that happens. That's how that really happens. Anything else would only be dangerous and destructive. And it's got to be something that's daily, that's continuous, that's maintained. And what's true for us physically is true for us spiritually. But see, some of us don't believe that. We come to church and we hope that one church service will radically change us. It's like, going to the gym one time. It's like, I went to the gym one time. Do I have them yet? Six-pack? I went one time. It's like, well, that's just one time. That's a good start. It's a good start. It's going to take a little bit longer than that. Same as church. But some of us what we're thinking. We think, well, I came to church. I surrendered to Jesus. Why aren't I altogether perfect yet? How come I'm still struggling? How come this isn't, how come righteousness isn't instantaneous? And it's like, God's like, that's not my plan. My plan for your sanctification is line upon line, precept upon precept. My plan for your life is to be in my word. If you will be in my word daily and consistently and holding to Jesus and knowing your weakness, you will be in a process of being changed day by day. And if that is you, I mean, I'm just telling you, I wish it was true for everybody. It's not. But if that is you, I just want to tell you there's something so profound in this letter where Jesus just looks upon you and he has nothing else to correct you on. Nothing. I mean, if you're waiting for some wave of condemnation and you're waiting for him to, lay into you and tell you how bad you are at everything in the world, he doesn't. He says, look, you're doing that's what I want. You're in the process of my sanctification. You're in the plan that I have, and he brings no other condemnation to that. And I'm just telling you, if this will grab you, because some of you, it would change your life. Some of you, you live under a weight of condemnation that is not God's. That you constantly feel your failure all the time, and you feel disappointment that you think is God. It is not God. And that's what he has nothing to say there, and it's just profound, and it's so incredibly rich. I think about what this is, and let's just do this. Open up your booklet for a quick moment. Just open that up there, and notice with me, we think about what we have here. I already filled in the first two, that for the Church of Philadelphia is holy and true, and all authority is his. He's told him he's a faithful, true church. But again, in this diagnosis, I just want you to notice that he just has nothing to correct them. They're not the only church that was that way. The church of Smyrna was that way. That was the persecuted church, that they were going through persecution and in that. But this one is also in that place. There was a church that we saw last week that there was nothing good said about them. It was the first and only church that was that so far that way, which was absolutely horrible, a dead church. But this moment, you just want to see this unique place where this church finds something that others do not find. He finds no correction, no place where he brings in a nevertheless statement, which all by itself is just so incredibly loud. Well, leaving that, what do we do with that? I mean, is there anything there? Well, Jesus does have a prescription. Interestingly enough, even though he didn't say anything wrong, he does have a prescription for them. What's the prescription? Notice with me, verse 11, behold, I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, that no one may take your crown. Jesus' prescription for this church, even though there was nothing wrong, he made no statement. He just says, you keep doing that. You've figured out how to do life. Keep doing it. Hold fast to the word. Hold fast to Jesus. Hold fast to your weakness. Don't let anybody take that away from you, because that's how life is done. He just says, you just keep that. Keep holding fast to these things. Don't let anybody take that from you, so that no one can take your crown. Not the idea of losing your salvation, but losing your reward. John would say it this way: look to yourselves, that we do not lose the things we've worked for, but that we may receive a full reward. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Again, I'm just speaking to a couple of you right now that you're kind of almost, maybe you're in the midst of that. You're thinking, I am in the Word. I am daily reading the Bible, and I do cling to Jesus. I don't know how anybody does life without Jesus. I mean, I need him every day. I need him every hour. I'm always leaning into Jesus because I know I'm weak. And if that's you, don't lose that. Don't lose it. Don't lose it. Don't stop. Don't stop being in the Word. Don't stop holding on to Jesus. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't let anything take you away from that place, because that's life. That's Jesus' prescription. Just hold fast. You need to hold on to what you have. So we think about this church, and again, it's a great church. It's a church that Jesus commends with no diagnosis of wrong, though he does give them this prescription. So what is this going to say to you? Well, flip your little booklet over and you get to the last section, which is this place of a call, a promise, where Jesus takes and makes it personal for the individual, doing this in every letter. Notice what he says. It says it this way in verses 12 and 13. He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go out no more. I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God. And I will write on him my new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So 3 things that are in every closing section in the letter. First of all, it is always a call to the individual, that you would be an overcomer, that you would have personal victory in this. And it's a worthy thing to understand in every letter, but this one you need to hear it as well. Just being a part of a good church is not enough. Please understand, I am not saying we are a good church. I would like to be. I am pursuing it. But if we are, even a little bit, being here doesn't make it okay. You still have to personally overcome. You still have to personally be one that says, that's my victory. I'm stepping into that victory personally. This is my life. It's been well said, being in a good church doesn't make you saved any more than being in a garage makes you an automobile. You can be here and be unsaved, and you can be here and not be right. There is a place of you needing to be real, and you need to overcome. But if you'll overcome, he gives you 2 promises. Let me unpack them rather quickly. It says, first of all, you're going to be a pillar in the temple of my God. You're going to go out no more. No doubt about it, a pillar has the idea of permanence. It's always used that way. The word pillar is used throughout the New Testament and Old Testament that way. But it's only one time that it specifically speaks of a pillar in the temple in the Old Testament, and that's found in 1 Kings. Solomon was building the temple in those days, and it says he set up the pillars by the vestibule of the temple, and he set up a pillar on the right and called its name Jachin, and he set up a pillar on the left and called its name Boaz. Those words, Jachin, literally means he shall establish, and just Boaz means in his strength. And so here's these pillars, is like, God's going to make this firm. God's strength is going to make this established. That this is going to be unmoving, unshakable, which here he then says in this place, you're going to be a pillar and you'll never go out again. That's an amazing promise. It's an amazing promise. Heaven's going to be wonderful and you'll never leave his presence. I just so much to say there, but it's a glorious promise. But not only is there this unshakable permanence, there is a place where he says, I'm going to write on him, and then he gives us 3 names. He says, I'm going to write on you 3 names. I'm going to write on you the name of God. I'm going to write on you the name of the New Jerusalem. And then interestingly enough, Jesus says, I have a new name. If you've been with us in Revelation so far, you already might understand that you as a Christian, you have a new name. That's what he told the church in Smyrna, that I have a new name for you. A new name that you're going to learn that describes who you are. And Jesus has a new name, which is unpacking more of him. He says, that name is going to be yours. Now, when he says all of this, there is a sense of an identification. And if we're looking for a place where we see something like this in the Bible, it would probably be in Isaiah. In Isaiah 44, it says, God speaks, he says, yet hear me now, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus says the Lord, who made you and formed you from the womb, who will help you. Fear not. I don't want you to be afraid. I don't want you to be afraid. And then he says this, he says, for I will pour out water on him who is thirsty and floods on the dry ground. I will pour out my spirit on your descendants and my blessing on your offspring, and they will spring up among the grass like willows by the watercourses. And these are all prophetic pictures of the gospel that are be fulfilled in Jesus and fulfilled in what we have. He says, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something that is going to be water on the dry ground, that is going to be spirit on your children. It's going to be amazing promises, but it's all what we have in Jesus. And he says, then one will say, I'm the Lord's. And another will call on the name of Jacob, and another will write on his hands, I'm the Lord's. And just write that. Just stamp it on me. That's who I am. I belong to God, and name himself by the God of Israel. And so it's this picture of belonging, of being identified. And that's what God says. He says, I'm going to take this, I'm going to write on you, and it's a place that you belong to him. It's not a great illustration, but for somebody it's going to land. For some of you who have children, you know you do this. You have toys, and you write their name on their toy. Because it's like, this belongs to them. This is my toy. So that if we play with anybody else, I get to take it home because it's mine. I mean, it's identified. It's got my name on it. And God says, I'm putting my name on you. I'm putting my name on you so that you're going to belong. Not only you'll be permanent in my presence, you won't be there as some kind of like, do I actually fit here? It's like, I belong. I belong to him. I belong to God. I belong in the new city of Jerusalem. I belong in heaven. And I belong to Jesus. I belong to him. It's incredible promises that are incredibly weighty and yet incredibly comforting in the midst of our world to say, hey, there's this place of permanence and belonging that he's promising to the true church. And so in this, he just with a statement that he's given in every one of the letters. He who has ears to hear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. And I want to say it as clear as I can right now. I hope that I've made some sense in some of this. I can't guarantee I did. But I do know this, he's talking. And there's something that as we hear this letter, there's something in here that is for us. He says the Spirit's talking. If you hear that, if you hear what the Spirit is saying, you grab that. You hear him. You make sure that you hear what he says. And maybe even on the bottom of your booklet down there, you would write it in that section that we give there. Like, so what was this for me? I don't know what it is, but as we head towards a close, I just want to take you back. And just back to the other side of it and just remind you in closing what made this church so good. What was it that made this church a good church? There were several promises. There were wonderful things in there. But there were, again, just as we think about what's there, there were those three things. He says, here's what you have. Here's what you have going for you. You know you're weak. You know you have a little strength. And you keep my word. And you keep to me. You hold to Christ. He says those things define you. Those things bring you into a wholeness and a health and a life. And I'm just telling you, that's what you want. This is what you want. If this is where you are, this is what you need. But I'm inviting you into a place that would define who you are. So you can close your Bibles or put away your notebooks at this moment, and then we want to take a moment to pray about it. And I think about all that this is, and I'm just telling you, I hope in the midst of it, God is speaking to you and drawing you into the life that he has. If you have questions, we'd love to just meet you in those. But right now, I'm just pleading with you to have heard from God today. So let's pray about that right now. Would you join me? God, thank you for your word. Jesus, thank you for you. You are holy and you are true and you are the one with all authority, pure, perfect, unwavering, just in any way messed up authority. No selfishness, no ugliness. You're amazing. And Jesus, as we think about your amazingness, we long to be a people that would respond to that would respond to your holiness, your truth, and your authority. To be those who would be in a place like Philadelphia but we know we're weak. Well, we know we have no confidence in ourselves. We are not trying to earn our own way because we know that's never going to work. Instead, we believe you've given us your word that changes us. And you've given us yourself to hold to, abide in, and cling to. God, I want those things. I want them to be true of me personally. And God, I want them to be true of this church. Where it's not, Lord, where we think too much of ourselves, where we are not holding on to your word the way we should, where we're not clinging to you, Jesus, as we ought. Would you fix that? Would you help us even this day to just correct and pursue you in a way that's genuine and right? Lord, we just ask for your help right now. As I'm asking for that for me in the church, I want to just ask you to take a moment. As we close, just quiet moment between you and the Lord, and wherever he's spoken to you, it's just worth letting it soak into your soul for a moment. He who has ears to hear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Quietly, you do that for a moment, and we'll close together and worship together in just a moment. Jesus, thank you for perfecting forever those that you are in the process of sanctifying. Got to think about what it is to be perfected in Christ, to be justified, to be made right in you. It's amazing. We celebrate that comes through the death of Christ. But we also just received this day the process of sanctification. That steady, constant growth that is your design, that this is the way you want it to be. When we understand maybe a little bit, there are no instant super Christians. The only way to grow is to grow. And to be in that process is a good process. Lord, to be in that process today and the process of sanctification is a wonderful thing. And would you help us to be in that today? Just growing, pursuing you. Lord, help us. I'm asking for that right now. In Jesus' name.